43.
43.
Still here.
Still here. It's been a while since we recorded once again.
Yeah, been a while. And now we're, publishing in a couple of days. So it's like, we don't usually make it this close.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what happens in the summer. I guess this is our first summer, so kind of just trying it out. So the topic, we had a cacao ceremony recently, and the topic that came up was, it's been coming up for me anyway, but the ideas of judgment and then non-judgment, and then like the struggle between what that means and what that doesn't mean. And then from the other end, something that I'm guided to bring in is idea of like heaven or hell, or idea of
Original sin.
Original sin, or what was the word I just used? I guess original sin, right? And then like the repenting, is that the word for it?
Mm-hmm.
And then something that came up also in our discussion during the cacao is the idea of this stretches across a multitude of religions. So like, even though I'm familiar somewhat with Catholicism, and you're familiar with Christianity, and I'm familiar with Christianity, but I think Catholicism has this as well. But I think it also extends into Eastern religions.
Yeah.
As well.
I mean, we heard that there are some, what do you call it? Sects of Hinduism where like you inherit karma.
It's called karma, but the karma is basically sin.
Right.
Like it almost
good or bad from your ancestors. So if your great granddaddy was a terrible person, you have some of that you have to, I guess, pay for or compensate for in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is, and was it 7 generations? Did she say 7 generations?
I don't know. So the idea behind all of this, right? And this is, so maybe I wanted to have this podcast in order to kind of set the record straight, as opposed to like all the bullshit that we have caked on top.
Yeah.
And the fear that we have designed. The original teachings of good and bad, or heaven and hell, or or sin or penance, originated not from the idea that you come in and you're a sinner and you have basically unsurmountable amount of history of sin behind you. And so like in Hinduism, I guess with this particular version of Hinduism, not is only yours, but it's like generations and generations.
Right.
And then to some extent, some people believe that it's also past lives, generations, right? So like not only do you come in here and it's your sins here, some people in some spiritual circles believe that, it's all of my lifetimes. And then guess what? There's like multiverses. So let's bunch those in. And so the core of all of these beliefs or the teachings, how we have started to interpret them, is that, guess what? You come in and you're going to hell, let's be honest, period. Like it's almost impossible for you not to climb out. And so then by default, what you spend the rest of your life doing is trying not to make the situation worse than it already is, because it's already damning, right? Like there's no saving yourself from it. No amount of confessions on Catholic's math will ever repent for everything that you think you do wrong. And then the idea is to propagate that thought forward. Like, guess what? You're already not going to wash away the past sins. So now we're going to, basically the only chance you have is making it somewhat better into the future.
Yeah.
But you live in constant guilt and constant fear and idea that you're doing things wrong, have done things wrong, and will continue to do things wrong.
Right.
And you only do things right out of the fear to offset the wrong.
Right. And I think that's a big deal, is you're not, even if you quote do a good thing, you often are not doing that for
the wrong
what I would
reason.
say the right reason.
Yeah, you're not doing it out of the heart space.
Right, out of fear that
to offset the sin, right?
Yeah.
So cleverly the structure actually takes the bad, amplifies it, but it takes any good and actually bunches in with the bad. So by default, even in your good doing, in your good deeds, unbeknownst to you, in some deeper, deeper cognitive thought process, you're doing the good things for the bad reason. And then thus, the energy that you're propagating is not a net good energy. It is actually still the net bad.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I mean, that's been I got a lot of issues with it, but what I found striking was that, all this negative stuff seems to either accumulate over the years or at least carry on from the first time. And it didn't make sense. It's like, oh, if the first sin passed down, why wouldn't all the other sins pass down? If we're gonna say that, sin number one, Eve biting the apple, was, we've all got that, then why not, why is that the only one? A,
Well, there's all of them.
right.
I mean, the teaching is it's all of them.
And B, why don't the good things that people do pass down too? Nobody's saying, oh, you happen to be the daughter of Mother Teresa, the biological daughter of Mother Teresa. Do you get any bonus from that? Nope, sorry. You're still just as bad as everyone else. So, yeah, there are a lot of religions that have that. I don't have an awful lot of good things to say about what I grew up in, but at least it didn't have that.
Okay, but besides religion, there is this inherent understanding with us as a human being. Excuse me, even without religious upbringing, like if you take the religious upbringing out of it, because I think 80% of it is actually being propagated by some sort of religious upbringing. But even without religion, there's this idea that you can be good or you can be bad. Right? When the parents are like raising you, they go, oh no, Timmy, don't do that. That's bad. You're a bad boy.
That's bad or you're bad?
Either way. I mean, parents are fucked up, so they will say that now that's bad, that you're bad, but whatever. But the teachings to our children, and we're responsible for that as well, is not to have them use their own judgment or to have them understanding the flow of energy and the space out of which is coming from, and then active choice into the knowing whether one to propagate this energy or propagate that energy, which is what the truth of the situation is, right? All of the teachings, all of the original teachings of good and bad, of hell and heaven or good and evil, of karma and dharma, all of those teachings come out from the standpoint of an active choice into the knowing, into your energetic center of when you're propagating something out of the goodness of your heart, not because you have to, just because that is where it's flowing, or out of fear and suppression of something else, and then thus out of your, protection, scarcity, fear mindset center.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it. All of the teachings, both Vedic in the Eastern traditions and then, Christian and Judeo-Christian teachings, the goal of all teachings was just to communicate that, is that there is inherent flow of energy that comes out of your form, comes out of your body, and it can come out of pure space. So if you want to say this heaven or whatever, right? But the pure space, and I think you by now know how it feels like. That uninterrupted, there's no energy there whatsoever. Like I actually mean no energy there whatsoever. And so the only thing that can flow out of that is the honest truth of this moment, which by default is this pure love, right? Like you're taking your channel of energy and you're just basically wiping the slate clean. And the only thing that you can possibly then feel and be with is the eternal source of the universe, which is love. And then every action, whether it's a good deed or even a bad deed, let's say, can only flow out of that space.
It's just natural.
It's natural by default, that flow. And then by default, if you had to classify good versus bad, it cannot be anything but pure love, right? And when I say word love, it is bigger than love. Again, this is the word love that I use for word love, but this is not
love.
Yeah, this is not the love that we would think of. It is literally the essence of the divine channel through you whenever you wipe the slate clean. And that is the teaching of Jesus, and that is the teaching of all Abrahamic religions, I guess. And in fact, this is the teaching that has been passed down into earth through the ancient knowledge of whatever you want to refer to it as the when somebody teaches you the flow, right, and the way to live, that is what they're teaching. Is for you to gain cognitive recognition of where you're placing your thoughts, and if your thoughts are being driven by any way out of the channel of yourself that is living in some sort of fear mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in line with my understanding of the Gnostic teachings. And that's on the surface level, that is also the Zoroastrian teachings. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It's when it's good thoughts, good words, good deeds, or else. And you do them because of the or else, not because that is the natural state.
Yeah.
That's where the there's this whole idea of, well, if you're doing the right thing for the wrong reason, on one hand, you're still doing the right thing, but on the other hand, what you're bringing to it may corrupt it in some way.
It's not that it's corrupted. Everything comes out of its net origin of intent, right? And if you're doing the right thing, but the origin of intent is pain and suffering and fear to overcompensate for that, then that's the energy you're bringing, regardless of what is it you're doing.
Right.
So it's weird, right? Because then there's a lot of questions. The truth is, we would pinpoint pretty much everything that we have ever done whenever we were not aware of ourselves, and we would go, wait, what?
Right.
And that's a lot.
And
and I'm not trying to blame, right? I'm not trying to scare people, but that is the teaching.
And when we do something, it isn't all. I would say it usually is not for some singular reason. There is a big, complex mass of reasons why we do something. Yeah. So it isn't, I'm doing this, I see a homeless person, I'm going to give him money. There's, I have empathy or sympathy for his situation, and I want him to be in a better place. But there's some sort of sense of projection in that. There's, there may be, I want him to think I'm a good guy. There may be, the other people might see me doing it. There may be, I'm going to deduct this. There's any number of possible reasons. I don't know.
Deduct it. You're walking around handing cash out or McDonald's out. And then you're like, okay.
Can I have a receipt? I don't know. I don't think you can deduct donations to individuals like that. Consult a tax expert. But there are, I should have picked an example that has more really obvious ones, but there's all kinds of subtle reasons that you do something, and it's usually a combination of a lot of them.
Out of your pain body.
Right. And so, the best you can do is kind of be aware of those, I'm doing this, and okay, well, there's a little bit of this, and there's a little bit of that, and there's a little bit of this, and, okay. And through that awareness, I think that, they kind of, I don't know what the word here is. Evolve,
or as you're able to see through them as they come up, because they will always come up, right? You're able to see through them, and you can go, oh, that's interesting, but then continue to do the thing that you were going to do out of the place of your heart.
Right, because I've noticed that I do something and I'm like, oh, it turns into ... Oh, and I hope somebody notices me doing it, or I hope somebody sees it, and I'll notice that I'm like, oh, okay, that's still there. But it every time it's less and less and less and less.
Yeah, but you continue to do that.
But it's still there.
You can continue to do that if at the core it is still something that flows out of your heart, right?
Yeah.
Your pain body or your ego will kind of insert justifications and
your rationalization,
or pompous things to go, oh, look, you're doing this thing. Look how good it is. And and in your case, it might be noticed. And in my case, it's oh, look, it will keep you safe, whatever, right? But that thing could still be the thing that flows out of your heart. the ego will just kind of like,
Right. It wants to, you're going to do something good, let's say. And the ego is like, oh, this is great. And I can piggyback on this.
yeah, it's a piggy
And,
bank.
if you're gonna
Yeah.
give money to a homeless guy, you may as well give money to a homeless guy in front of a crowd so everybody can see how good you are, or something.
Yeah,
These are
yeah.
contrived examples, but right? On the surface, what's the difference? The homeless guy now has more money than he did before, but there's that intent you're bringing into it,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah. No, it with me, like I can relate to, like, from the homeless standpoint or from the suffering standpoint. I can relate very deeply to the trauma of human suffering, right? And like the contemplative notion that goes into the understanding of what it means to be in pain and what it means to suffer, or what it means um to be in a dire situation, right? And so I can want to help someone, but through the form of what is what is my way of helping other than to showcase love and to showcase the other, right?
Mhm.
But then I do see the fear mindset still being in there, kind of piggybacking on the idea of like, oh, look, can you relate to this? Can you look at you, what you were in the situation? Don't you want this to be
Right.
alleviated for someone else?
Which,
To some extent, but dot, because I'm bringing myself into it. I'm bringing my own ego and my own pain body into it. But at the same time, on the surface, you can just see it for what it is. And
right.
and bringing love into it, regardless of how you feel about your own personal pain body, or attachments towards, or fear about it, or whatnot, flows out of a different space. Like you can feel the space out of which it flows.
Right. It's like, on one hand, it seems very natural to, I get them confused, empathize with somebody in a worse off, quote, worse off situation than you, and go, oh,
If you can relate in some way.
even if you can't relate in some way,
No,
there's,
you can. There's certain parts of your pain body that will very easily go, oh yeah, I can see myself.
I
If I
guess,
were
I
in that
mean,
situation, oh yeah, I would want
yeah, and
help,
even if
or
it's,
I would
even if,
whatever.
yeah, sure. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like, if I were in that situation, even though maybe I've never been in anything closely related to that situation, but sure,
But
you can
you're
project, oh, well,
projecting.
if that's vaguely similar to when I was bullied in second grade,
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
Who knows?
You're projecting your pain body
Yeah.
onto the circumstances that vaguely
Yeah.
look
And
like it.
and that seems like the most human of all emotions, is to do that, on one sense, to other people, to animals, to, oh my gosh, this poor house is in such bad condition. You almost persona. I heard this thing on this podcast where people will, scientists will show people this little animation, and there's like a square, and then here comes a triangle, and the triangle comes and it bumps into the square a couple times, and then the square kind of hops away, and people are
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, that poor square, that triangle is such a bully. And it's like, these are two shapes animated. There's no, it's like,
Pain body.
you can't get further away from a human being than two-dimensional shapes, black lines on a white screen, and that's
Yes.
it. And people want to personify everything. And the closer it gets to a person, like a cat, oh my gosh, look at her. She's basically a tiny furry person,
I
right?
mean, but we have talked about how much personal pain body we have projected onto the rescuing of this cat.
Right?
Like
Yeah,
we
sure.
have
This
we
cat
have taken a
especially,
lifetime and a lifetime and take it and went, oh my gosh, look at all the things that we want to
right?
save her
We
from.
still talk about that,
No, I know we were having really hard time with this idea.
right? And yeah, here you go. It was. I feel it was genuinely the right thing to do to rescue her off the side of the interstate. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm like, well, what if I was a cat on the side? Well, but what if we took it away from its mommy? But what if, and there's all these things that get projected into it. And,
Yeah, but we talked about all the things that are your personal pain bodies.
Sure. And
you did not
yeah,
have a good, solid relationship with your mother, and
Sure.
what you wanted is nurture and love, like
Right.
intimate nurturing love,
Right.
and you did not have that. So, in your idea, taking her away from mom is simply,
devastating.
projection
Sure.
of you actually not having a nurturing, loving relationship with your mother.
Right.
That's it.
And at the same time, it's like, well,
Like to me, I don't feel that. See, I have zero taking away from mommy situation, but I do have cold on the streets without food,
Right.
which is my thing.
And she is literally going to die today if we don't rescue her because she's
You
just
said
laying in the middle of the road.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm not, death. There's then there's the fear of death.
Right.
And in my case, it's like, I don't see that, but unsafe. Like running, to me, it was actually worse than death, is jotting back and forth in the road between the cars, not knowing which way to go so you don't
Right.
get hit by a tire.
And then there's, but was she supposed to die? Did we intervene in the, and it's an endless rabbit hole that you can bounce back and forth. But what if she was supposed to be rescued? But what if it's pointless. And so at some point you have to just rise above it all and go, well, the right thing to do was to rescue the cat.
No, but okay, here's a very easy solution past that, right? So the pain body, right, the fear. So we'll live in the lower 3 chakras and the lower 4, not counting the heart. So the 4 that I'm talking about not counts the heart.
3?
Well, I'm talking about the stomach now, right? So there's the root, sacrum, solar plexus, and stomach, right?
Oh.
And the spleen. So the spleen is also in there. So like just basically from
Everything before the
here
heart.
on up until here, before the heart, right? So there's all kinds of chakras, and more chakras are opening for us right now in order for us to be able to release the energy that is truly stuck in there, besides the 3 that we're always working with. So from that, right, I'm just kind of brush through that. You can feel the rescue come right there. Like, what is the right thing to do out of the space of your heart, right? You can almost go into that space regardless of all the details. And you can feel the influx to rescue comes out of that space, right? If the slate is clean and you insert rescue into it, you can feel the rescue coming out of the space of heart, which is basically kind of this oneness, the systematic oneness of you. And you're being driven into action from, let's say, love, right? Or from higher guidance, or from your passion or higher self.
Compassion.
Or whatever, right? Like that it comes out of love to me. Like I just feel this endless love. It's almost like divine going, bloop, and here you are doing that action. Do you know what I mean? Can you feel that?
Yeah.
And so you're doing that out of it. But then later, your small mind, your ego mind goes, oh, let me piggyback off of this action.
It was later. It was all later.
Yeah.
In the moment, it was like,
your small mind is later.
Yes.
And
it was after we were driving that it occurred to me, wait, do we just do the right thing or not? For all the possible reasons.
Yeah. And I mean, we have had her for 6 months now, or maybe more. And maybe we're right at 6 months.
December, yeah.
Yeah, so right at 6 months.
March, April, May, June. July. We're in July, so 7.
Okay. But we're still processing the small mind, right? Everything from here on up, on down, of all the little things that pain body still being triggered within us, right? She's kind of the catalyst, right? I mean, I have said when she came into our world, I said, oh, she's a catalyst for change. She's an even bigger catalyst than I am. She's like, oh, you're already catalyst for change, but we'll kind of dump this cat on you. And so yeah, to us, that is what she is. There's all these things that are still there that keep on popping up. They try to piggyback ride on this prime directive. It is quite literally a prime directive of our lifetime. That this flow of Kundalini, if you want to call it, of energy, of love, of universal oneness that everything flows out of, right? And then basically, depending on how active or how chattery your pain body is, right? Or how much trauma processing you have or have not allowed yourself to do, or how much consciousness you bring into your actions, or realization that the actions just flow out of the moment of love and everything else is just chatter, then you will start inserting narrative. Like you will actually almost paint the picture post. And you almost rewrite the picture post.
Yeah.
How many times do we do something that just intuitively flows out of us? And then later when we lay in bed, when we can't sleep, like stories merge. Yeah. And then the narrative changes and the story gets recreated. And then you question and doubt everything.
That is the worst time, is when you can't sleep and, you start going down the mental rabbit hole of what ifs
Rewriting.
and rewriting, right?
You're rewriting everything.
I've heard it called the demon dogs. Then the demon dogs come out in your mind and just go crazy.
Yeah, but all that is your unprocessed, unrecognized points of pain or points of fear or points of trauma, then get rolled in, and instead of being actualized out of your body as just that, you start building narratives of questioning. But if you just go into why, and why, which is what we talked about,
Yeah.
For the last 50 episodes.
That's the antidote.
Yeah. Then you go, oh, here's why I'm chattering, or here's why I'm questioning.
Right.
Because in our case, right, if you just go, oh, if you're wondering, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing of taking her away from mommy? Well, I mean, heck, that's not rocket science for us to go, yeah, I have mommy issues and I did not get nurtured and loved as a child the way I think a child should. And then thus, I don't want her not to have that.
Right.
And so when we love her, in your case, you're trying to give her the love that she should have gotten from her mommy.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you're trying to be her mommy, and in my case, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to protect her and save her, right? So the reason why our daughter keeps on, always wanting to poke at her, because she's over the top adorable. I mean,
Right.
Maybe you can flash a picture over here. Like, it is the ball of cuteness, and it's irresistible. Like, it is so irresistible not to touch it,
Right.
and not
It's
to
so
want
funny.
to bother it.
We've had many cats, but they've all been like short-haired cats, and this
But
is
but her energy is just gold.
longer, and it's so fuzzy, and I just want to crunch it up right now. But it's sleeping, and you can't wake up a sleeping cat.
Yeah, so we're obviously obsessed with this cat, but so
she's right here out of frame. Everyone's like, why is he looking down? Stretch.
And so and so yeah, so in my case, right, what my goal with her is, through my pain body, is to protect her and save her and to make sure she feels safe. I mean, because that's literally my pain body that I'm projecting onto her.
Right.
And in your case, you're projecting lack of love and lack of whatever. And so you're playing that game with her, and
Right.
I'm playing another game with her, right? And Annabelle plays whatever game she plays whenever she chases her and wants to smother her. Out of control. I think Annabelle struggles with lack of control.
Mm-hmm.
And so her idea to control something else is kind of like winning.
I think it's maybe combined with, you being told not to.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. Right.
Yeah.
Because I tell her not to. She has to win. She has to be her own person.
Right. Either.
And so that's her struggle.
Yeah. I guess maybe.
And she gets angry when she's being said no. And when you tell her no, it's basically the end of the world. But she's 10, right? So it's kind of like, I think it'll get easier for her as she gets older.
I hope so.
Well, as she will start to understand what it means to hear a no, right?
Right.
And where it hits her, right? But she's very cognitive. Well, during last cacao ceremony, we did an exercise, and the things she wrote were very aware, like deep down of what her triggers are and what she's going to do to not trigger. And then, like, she even wrote about Haley and the triggers she had around her, and me telling no to her on torturing the cat. And we don't actually torture her. We see plenty of videos that people actually torture cats. And actually, don't actually mean physically torture. I mean, like, they put them in strollers, or they have those carry bags and they carry the cats in carry bags. All of that I consider torture.
This is, she might get interrupted when she is asleep.
Yes,
or something.
yes, because everybody wants to snuggle her face into her.
Yeah. She fights back.
She does fight back. She's so good. Anyway, so the idea of the badness, the idea that we are bad and then we need to compensate for our sins, even without using the religious words of sins or good versus evil or whatever, even comes in from the parental teachings, right?
Sure.
And in your case, like, you understood that if you're bad and you thought you were inherently bad, then you don't get love, right? And your survival was hinged on that, right?
True.
And in my case, I'm trying to think if I ever thought I was bad. I guess I knew that some things I was doing were bad. I don't know what I thought.
Well,
I guess with me, I never went into cumulative sin.
I don't think it was that for me, but there's a big difference between I am doing something bad versus I am bad.
They get bunched in, and I think fed into the same.
Oh, to me, it was, I was inherently, if not bad, then unlovable or broken in some way.
Did that come
Which-
from religious teaching?
No, I don't think so.
Or just it came from the fact that you were not getting nurturing love?
But
and so
that,
you couldn't comprehend or explain that.
right. But that had nothing to do with my actions. It wasn't because of my actions that I was unlovable. It was just inherent. In the same way that I happen to have blue eyes, and there's nothing I can or could have ever done about that, I just happen to have been unlovable. And that was just like an inherent characteristic of me from birth. That is how I felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, no matter what I did, good or bad, that does not change that characteristic of me.
But you tried to do a lot of really good stuff.
I tried.
In order to get love. Is that to overcompensate?
It was to
unlovable?
overcompensate. It was like, well...
Did you believe that it was fixable, or did you mean you need to do enough just to fake it?
It was enough to fake it. It was,
Yeah.
I can do enough good stuff, and I can con my way into getting what was actually attention, not love. Attention, but attention was the best proxy I had to love. I got nothing better, so I'll get this attention/affection. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is the point I want to make. Somehow we think that it's just all bad. It's all, let's say, evil, or it's all unfixable and ultimately broken.
What's it? Us?
Yes, sure. And then there's no fixing it. There's no wiping the slate clean. We don't actually ever believe that somehow. And so the only thing you can do is stumble your way through doing enough good stuff to offset just slightly a little bit of bad, but the bad will always be bad.
Right.
You will always be bad. You can fake your way through this world and pretend like you're not and do enough good stuff to where it looks like you're not, but deep down, somehow you believe that you are.
Right. For me, it wasn't replace bad with unlovable and replace good with impressive. And that was me.
Yeah, but that's just nuance.
Maybe.
Personal
right.
icing.
We feel X.
On the shit ass cake.
Yeah, we all feel X. And X is, some sort of negative thing, which is just inherent.
Yeah.
And we all want to do Y, which is some sort of positive thing, good, impressive, whatever, in order to overcompensate. And although we all just know, we just inherently know that, that X, that bad thing will never go away.
Yeah.
It's uncleansable. We hope that if we just slap enough Y paint over it, maybe people won't see it.
Yeah.
Or maybe people will overlook it. Or maybe we'll get what we want out of it by hiding it or conning our way through it in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That rings 100% true.
Yeah, but that's number one issue with all humanity.
Right.
That's it. There's nothing else to solve.
And that wasn't the religion I grew up in did not believe in original sin. So it wasn't that.
It inherently comes in somehow through upbringing, through rhetoric, through morphic resonance. I don't know. It's almost like the idea of coming to Earth. It actually inherently is wired in to go through that experience. Yeah. You come in and is your personalized version of hell. That's it. If there is such thing as heaven and hell, this is it. You come in and you come in into hell where you are bad. And then everything you just said basically defines that as hell. Right. And the process of awakening, or the process of contemplating actualization into you, is the recognition that all of that is just bullshit and it's a narrative. And the only thing that anyone needs to do about it is to recognize the untruth of that and then learn to live out of this space.
If I find it, it goes here. But I wonder if there's any research that on before the idea, the Catholic idea of original sin, before that, so this is a long time ago, if more or less people inherently felt that way, or if that's, while I didn't happen to be brought up in that religion, that's still pervasive across society, and how much of it was influenced by that over the last 2,000 years. Go back 3,000 years, is that still, endemic to society?
Well, as you are born, the mass is indoctrinated into the teachings
Sure.
of their lineage, right?
Right.
So if you're a Catholic, and majority of population in the United States is Catholic, right? I'm assuming.
I don't know if it's.
I thought like Catholics take up most of.
I don't know. I mean, it is the most popular branch of Christianity, but I don't know if it is, more popular than all the others combined.
Oh yeah, okay, fine, but the Christian sin, heaven and hell.
Oh, then yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, heaven and
right.
hell.
Heaven and hell,
You,
right? Catholicism puts a flavoring on it, to give the hierarchical structure of the Pope and the bishops and the cardinals more power, because then somehow they can like alleviate your sin
yeah.
on a Saturday during confession or whatever, or whatever. Just bullshit. It's just bullshit through control. But the idea that we are inherently bad, right, is systematically bred in, definitely through Christianity, but then also through upbringing, and then through just the rudimentary knowledge of ourselves, of our knowledge of Judaism, and then Hinduism, and to some extent Buddhism, right? Think about it. Also in Buddhism, there's the idea of contemplative being, or just being, right? Or nonviolence, or compassion, right? And they teach that, right? So I will maybe clarify. All of the teachings to do good are actually good within themselves, as long as we don't insert the idea that the bad is there and then thus overwhelms the good.
Right.
Right.
We're doing the good in order to
Offset the
make
bad.
up for offset the bad.
Right. It's the same thing with Buddhism. The teachings of Buddhism, and then I know you're diving into your Buddhism thing right now, but maybe you can chime in case they started talking about this. But the the idea of compassion, right, and non-judgment and non-violence, all is great teaching, except when people come in with their active lower chakra still firing up, they take that and they go, oh shoot, I'm not compassionate enough. Oh, I'm too judgmental. Oh shoot, I would be violent. I am
Yeah.
violent. And so even though the teaching themselves are at the core, even vibrating, in your higher chakra right here, that is what they are saying. How you're interpreting them is through the pain body lower chakras.
Right. Even when even when I was reading the book, I'm like, oh, I've still got some of that. Oh, and there is this inherent like,
right. But think about it. You can read that book and you can read it and go, oh yeah, I can feel where that's coming from. That is where I am feeding the homeless. That is where I am rescuing the cat. That is where I am just flowing in love and allowing that to be my truth.
Right. And I recognize that, these teachings are the ideal. Here is the awakened Buddha level stuff.
We're
I know that, and there's this disconnect between where Buddha was and where everybody else was.
There's no disconnect. But
that's what you feel. You feel, oh well, I still want more money, and I still want this, and I still want that, and and it is different from the archetypal ideal. Okay. And I think that difference is what creates that like, ooh, well, then I'm not, then there's something wrong with me because I'm not there yet. I mean, and you can put that into any religion that has their teachings of,
all of so yes, and yes. But there's just one step. There's this one caveat that is necessary to take all of that shit and wipe off, I don't know, 100,000 years worth of confusion on Earth. Is that if you're interpreting everything through the lower chakras that are riveted in pain and trauma and fear, then nothing will be seen for what it is. Like, nothing will be seen for what it is. Right. That's it. And there's this nugget of opening that you can go, What if everything I interpret just comes through and I interrupt the channel of my prime directive? What if I open into my prime directive, which is pure love?
Right.
How can I interpret anything other than for what it is?
I think
Does that make sense? Like, I know you know what that means.
Yeah, it does. The way I keep, I mean, this is my, maybe I've said it before. This is my metaphor for it, is that if you're in those lower chakras, you're in the maze, and there's no way out of the maze.
Yeah, but saying that
And
without feeling that is
yeah,
almost irrelevant.
I know, but this is how I feel it. I literally visualize it like this: that the only way out of this maze is to rise above and not be in the maze and not play that game.
Yeah, but like, if you're still in pain and you're like, it's almost
Yeah.
like you would go la 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 la, deny the pain. Some people
It's
would
not,
interpret it
yeah,
that way.
it's not an escapist thing. It's a reframing of it thing. It's
Is it not
playing at it.
easier?
It's a different level.
Okay, is it not easier, right? Because you and I used to have a lot of fights. Well, actually, we did not fight a lot, but anytime we would have a fight, you were angry and adamant, and you needed to win, and you were just spiraling clouds of bullshit.
I have done that, yes.
Yeah, like with you, you're ceasing to hold on to something so tight, and then you know that your argument that will not hold truth because it's coming out of the wrong space. So you're literally clusterfucking yourself into a tornado, right? Like, that is how I saw it. And so sooner or later, when I recognize that behavior within you, what would I tell you? I'm like, we need to stop, and you need to go and meditate and sit on it 5-10 minutes, and then you come back and you talk to me, right? And the second you go into that meditative state, what happens? You calm down your lower fear and pain body chakras, and you intuitively connect with your third eye and your heart. And then that going out of the maze basically just opens yourself up to truth.
Yeah.
And then the spiral clusterfuck of shit that is the tornado of poop,
yeah.
it does not exist.
Right. It's right. I mean, yes, that's what I mean by rising above it, and all the things that matter in the maze, all the things that are so important.
Well, no, because it is justification for your survival.
Yes. All the stuff in the maze is this 3D, egocentric, quote, survival-based stuff that is just all-consuming and so important, and literally the most important things in the world.
Yes. To where you argue to hell in order to get that point out.
But if you can, I mean, that is the trick. If you need a trick, there it is. Meditate for a couple minutes and get out of the maze. And then it's like, none of that stuff matters in the least.
But what's more important is you actually see that fight, that argument, that chaos is coming out of
you see where it's coming from.
The body of a child who's afraid. Right. It's fear.
Yes, you see that. And at the same time, the specific issues you were arguing about are like, they're all ridiculous and they make no sense anymore.
Yes, but you have compassion for yourself as an afraid child.
Sure.
And then you're able to actually, you're actually able to offer love because you're in this space.
Right.
And you go, oh, look, I'm an afraid child. I'm arguing this because when I was small, I didn't receive love. Is that true? It doesn't even matter. That was the perception. When I was small, I didn't feel safe. And I can offer that love to myself right now. And then literally that is the nugget, that everything changes. The interpretation of humanity, not as the whole of you, changes. And then thus you can derive your center. You can derive the programming of your prime directive, that it is the propagation of love.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, here I am. I think every time we record a podcast, I'm like, here's the answer. And I'm like, I can just keep on repeating the answer to all in a different way through all of these episodes, but that's it.
Yeah. And if you can live more of your life in that state, and I'm not 100% there. I don't know if anybody's 100% there, but
I bounce out of it.
But like, what's really interesting is going through the bounce in and out. I've had times where I would be, couple seconds up, couple seconds down, and it's fascinating. It's like oh my gosh, this is so, wait, it's not important at all. No, oh my God, but it is so, no, it's not. It's just, I'm right at that threshold, and it's just back and forth, above and below this line, just seconds in each. And it's fascinating
Yeah.
to watch something be both the most important thing in the world and have the least amount of importance ever. Almost simultaneously.
Yeah. I've said this before, but I'll repeat it. We came into this world to have that experience. It is not to experience the hell, and it is not to experience the heaven, if that's the term. It's to go through the recognition of transitional process of what it is like to alleviate yourself from this space and have a journey into the other. That's magnificent. The fact that all of us right now in this moment and every moment are basically going through that process in their own unique way. My way is not the one set way. I'm just saying that I have come to find a way that works for me.
Yeah.
And that is a very easy way. It's proven through lifetimes, through meditations and through contemplations and all the alchemical and Kabbalion text, Zoroastrianism, all the religious texts. In fact, this is what they're talking about.
Right. If you can rewind the modern day religions back to the original teachings of their enlightened founders, yes.
That's it.
That is,
there's nothing
this
else.
is it. It's,
yeah.
The path to, I don't know if I want to say happiness. I'll say enlightenment.
To me, it's path to self.
Sure.
It's actually the prime directive. I use that as a term, as a guided term, but it is you. There's this essence of you. And then you
have to discover it.
Yeah, you just have to find you. And the you is the most beautiful thing you could possibly imagine.
Right. And through discovering you discover all the stuff about you that is not you.
Yeah.
The stuff that's it's hard to say it without some sort of implied judgment thing. I was going to say weighing you down, which in a sense is not a bad way to word it.
No, it's a density. It is three-dimensional density we have taken on, and that is a personalized version of hell. Now, when I say hell, when I refer to these terms, I don't actually mean it from the dualistic, binary standpoint, right? Because the journey of self, as I've written this in my book, but now it's more obvious than ever, is basically that, is coming in and getting lost in the narrative of you. And it's beautiful. Like, it is the most beautiful thing is you are so unique and so beautiful. And the narrative of you is just so nuanced and so perfect. And you're basically not like anything else on this world. Like 8 billion of us times the multidimensionality of our existence, plus the multitude of timelines that it encompasses is ginormous, right? And so each one of us is the unique version of that interpretation. And so we interpret our world through this set of densities or, bullshit or pain bodies or whatever you want to call it. But that is beautiful. And so when people say, oh, your superpower lies, your power is you, it is because you start to see the amazing energy that you have been misappropriating it to use as a propagation of narrative that is the pain and suffering, and instead choose to see it as, oh my gosh, that is love. That is beauty, right? That is me being able to be compassionate, not only for myself, but for the rest of the humanity, and being reverence of the fact that we get to live this life, that each one of us gets to interpret our lives through the most amazing lens. It's like, the kaleidoscope. It's never the same, right? And so each one of us has the most amazing kaleidoscope in the front of our eye. And then that's it. That is the narrative. And thus, I guess maybe through extensions, I want to say the other part that comes into her, which is a really small part of it, but there's something just came up during the cacao ceremony, is judgment. Mm. This basically goes into a very obvious extension of if each one of our souls is the most unique and beautiful being and has its own kaleidoscope, we cannot possibly understand or perceive what each other's soul is supposed to do or not supposed to do because we're not looking into their kaleidoscope.
Right.
We're not seeing things through their own interpretive lens of their beauty.
Yeah.
And so thus the judgment is impossible and is basically only exist when we function in the lower pain body chakras of ourselves, because we're taking our pain and we're projecting our kaleidoscope idea onto somebody else, and we're using that as judgment, which is fine for you to keep that for yourself as a reflective notion of what it means for you to judge that action
Right.
through your kaleidoscope.
Right.
But in no way you can extend that judgment onto someone else.
Right. It means that this action that you're judging is not for you. And
Yes.
it
through your unique version of self.
And it's weird because it's like the you can pick some sort of the most quote horrible example. You can the Holocaust or whatever. It's like it's almost like, how do you not judge that?
The only judgment you can have is through your own lens. Would you want to be Hitler in this moment of now? Okay, no. Do you have compassion for your people because you can see what pain and suffering is who went through the Holocaust? Yes. Is that a good thing in your eyes through the lens of you now? You would say, yeah, no, I don't think suffering and propagation of that much suffering, that much pain is something that I would choose. But that is the stopping point. That is your stopping point of recognizing that is the only spot at which you can choose judgment. So that is not for you. This is not something you agree with. This is not something that you would propagate, but you cannot extend anything past that onto anyone else.
There are no moral absolutes.
No, because there's moral absolute for you.
For you, but there are no universal moral absolutes.
That is the extension of the problem that we have designed, is we have taken our personal kaleidoscope of expression and we are attempting to take personal narrative and push it out there and cram it into a societal norm.
Right.
And then we are either stuck, wait, this societal norm is not what I believe in, therefore the societal norm must be wrong. And then thus, right now, what are we doing? We're trying to unravel this cumulative collective of narratives because they don't marry one another anymore. And that's hence the argument, hence the war, hence the atrocities, is because they don't match up.
And this comes across in all kinds of really obvious ways. The societal norms have changed, but there's still all kinds of people who, oh my gosh, homosexuality is wrong, or interracial relationships are wrong, or women can't vote or shouldn't drive or whatever. All these things which society has progressed on these issues, but is that fundamentally different from killing people is wrong? Everybody for the most part happens to agree that killing people is wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's codified into a law. But so was women can't own property. That was codified into a law at one point, and we all seem to agree on that back in the day.
There's people out there who actively go at killing people.
There is.
I mean, do they think it's wrong, or do they think they're a sinner? Do they think that they're good? Do they think that they're bad?
I don't know.
No, but what I'm saying is we don't know. It is a kaleidoscope narrative of that individual, and then the relationship that individual is with his victim. And that is their kaleidoscope narrative. And the crossing of those two narratives is the gameplay. And I'm not trying to diminish murder as a game, but that is a very personalized narrative and very personalized interpretation of that person's life, and then the victim's intersection with that life. And what flows out of that? The trauma that flows out into, being the mother of somebody who is a serial killer, or the mother of someone whose child has been murdered, or the father that seeks revenge, and how that plays into the idea that he wants to kill the guy who killed his daughter, or the idea of a father who is forever hateful towards somebody who murdered his mother, right? Do you see what I mean? You could relate to that. That formed that human being. That human being is formed by the trauma that he needs to hate somebody, and his entire life revolves around the hatred that is somebody taking his mother away because he's a serial killer.
Right.
So that's it. That's the narrative. And then you, in your case, flow out of that narrative.
Right.
What it is like to hate someone, like to the core of their belief.
Right.
And then raising his children with that type of hate.
Right.
And then you going, wait, what is the justification? Obviously, this is right. The propagation of this much hate and this much animosity and this much rage,
Right.
to where if this person was standing in front of me and you had a fucking knife, you would close and personal would stab that person.
Right.
That much rage is a narrative of that human being.
Right. And
then he's raising the children out of that energy.
Right. And it just propagates and multiplies down the generations.
Yes. But in your case, when you're a child, you cannot process the fact that you're living with that rage.
Yeah. Or a bigger example is, World War II in Ukraine and Russia. It was so traumatic that, the people who lived through that told their children how bad it was. And then there's this pain there and this hatred there, fear of war. And, we sure can't let that ever happen again. Oh, and if there's Nazis, we got to go maybe do something about it. All the way down. Keeps going.
Yeah, that's on the bigger level, but
Yeah.
You should acknowledge your level as
No,
well.
I acknowledge my level.
Right. But your levels were personalized to your family circle. But that is your reflective version of your kaleidoscope, intersection with, the other person's kaleidoscope, intersection with the serial killer's kaleidoscope, intersection with your grandma's kaleidoscope. And so, how can I possibly judge what that does to a human being?
Right.
Right.
It's
the same way you cannot judge what being raised by a grandmother who was occupied by the Nazi Germany and was raped by them does to a grandchild who's being raised by that grandmother, and the amount of hatred and fear you would instill upon the idea that there's an invading force that is the Nazis.
Right.
Do you mean nobody would ever be able to judge that?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's very easy to rile up and go, well, yeah, obviously your side is in the right because you're on the side of the victim and not the serial killer. And my side is in the right because I'm on the side of the victim and not the perpetrator.
Right. It's easy to go into some victim mindset and, But
not victim one direct, but victim and generalized.
Removed, yeah.
Generalized, normalized, in fact. Right? The victim, just like the rectangle and the triangle, the victim is always right. And the hatred and the judgment and the propagation of actually what's negative is justified because this is how a victim can seek justice onto the perpetrator. Right? We have normalized that narrative. I know this is a really touchy subject because there's all kinds of questions to be asked, but think about the energy that I would propagate out of hatred if I had to propagate hatred out of Nazis, right? Out of that space.
Right.
I'm literally being taught to fear, hate, and prejudice entire group of people.
Right.
Because of the scenario of, let's say, 20 people that occupy my grandmother's house.
And that could be used to justify all kinds of terrible actions.
Yeah. Future wars. Hence, 2024, Ukraine.
Yeah.
2024, Russia.
Yeah.
That war was stirred based on the fear that, guess what? Nazis. Right. And for example, on my end, my father is a living example of that trauma. He has never let that trauma go. And he believes that because the trauma is live and active within him, how blindness looks like is, guess what? I cannot even see the fact that I'm being used to be affected into the fear based on the narrative that I still have alive inside of me that I have not actualized or actually let go. And therefore, at all costs, we need to stop this war because there's Nazis involved. Period.
Stop this war? Or... stop the war in one way or the other.
Yeah, right. But it's because you're swimming blind in the active lower chakra centers of the pain, right? And you're not in here. You're just drowning, right? Whenever you're spinning out of control, and this is the most important thing, That is the number one sign that you're drowning in your pain. And yeah, I guess I have a skill set of being able to see through that, and then be able to to alleviate the blindness and allow people to actually see their drowning.
So is there room to intervene on this? If you see someone kicking a homeless guy, is there room to try to stop him?
I mean, but you can, right? Like,
I think there is. How is that different from rescuing a cat? It seems like the right thing to do.
right. So I think this comes back down to that flow.
It's
Everyone
from
at their
the
core has this innate, unlimited supply of energy that is their essence of self. The prime directive is the term that it is used, galactically, but that's it, right? You can tap the essence of you is this prime directive, not because there's right versus wrong, right? Like I don't
right.
know
I
how the
think I
term
think
is
everybody
being.
wants to boil it down to right versus wrong, but it isn't.
No,
It's
it is
everybody's.
it is.
Is it everybody's individualized truth?
Yes, but it comes out of the isness. And so, like, the essence of that individualized truth is love. And so, through it, interpretation of that extension are very individualized. The kaleidoscope style individualized.
Does that mean that there will always be some? It's usually a small percentage of people whose truth is something that is kicking homeless people or starting wars, and that's just how Earth works. And the rest of us, the best we can do is, well, I guess we have laws, or we have
I guess
the judicial system, or
are you
whatever.
asking if we were to completely erase all trauma and pain out of the system, and then we're only addressing the energy of the prime directive, which is the heart center, and which is our third eye, and basically the essence of us.
Right.
Are you saying, is there any bad flowing out of that? Is that what you're asking?
I guess I'm not sure what I'm asking. As it stands today, there seems to be people who will do things that we all consider bad, right? There's murderers and there's rapists and there's people kicking homeless people or whatever. It's, I try to make something that's just so obviously wrong. But what do we do about it? How do we move to a society more in line with, see, and here, how do I even word this without some sort of like judgment? How do we move to a society that's in line with what I think is right? Right?
Well, but that's the thing. That the only answer, right? This goes back to the episode where we had the Seekers of the Universe, right? That, which is basically, it explains everything, right? As long as we function in the binary notions of good and bad, then we are living in our lower chakras. And so thus, judgment is derived from that space. If you're spending your time arguing or defending your side of things and trying to get somebody else to change their mind about their side of things, you're doing that out of a pain body trauma of binary actions of good and bad, where you're trying to mitigate something that is being triggered within you. And then if you think you can change somebody else's mind about it, that will somehow keep you safer. I know that is not what you think, and you think this will make the world better. But the truth is, it has nothing to do with the world. It will keep you safer. It will keep you happy. It will keep you, honestly, safety, and then survival. You will survive better. You will be safer. You will feel more comfortable. You will whatever. And there's no global narrative. Everything else is a personal narrative. And the arguing and the wars and the atrocities and even a simple conversation of rhetorical recourse is there to try to mold the global narrative. In truth is because you're not recognizing that that action is stemming out of your personal space, right? And so when, like, that's it. Like I right, when you and I, like, I get triggered like that, right? If something triggers me, oh, I can get going, and I'm good at building narratives, and I'm good at justifying my side of things, and blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah 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 blah, and right, and I
I
can,
mean, we all do.
yeah, right, but that much passion, if you feel that much influx and that much passion, and you're rolling it in your head, and you have to talk about it, and you have to justify it, and all of this, and you're like, oh, they're wrong and I'm right, and all that bullshit. Like, I know it's hard to say bullshit because we spend that time there. We spend a lot of time there. The only narrative that exists there is, why am I having this influx? And what is it within me that is causing me to make this thing a thing? Half of the time, that thing has nothing to do with us. The thing that we're actually all riled up about it has maybe tangentially has something to do with us, or even if it's touching us in some way, it is not touching us to an extent where we need to have this reaction, right? Our safety for the most part is not being threatened whenever we have this thing.
Right.
Whenever our day revolves around that thing.
It's poking some pain body.
Yes. And so the only action that you should seek out of any narrative of such is to step back, possibly by yourself, if there's no one else is there to support you, or if you have someone who has their wits about them and can be an outside party to where they can help you dig down of what is it about me that is causing this reaction. Think of yourself as responsible party of this reaction and responsible party of even seeing this in front of you. What is it about me that is causing this to be the truth of me right now? Right?
Mhm.
If I'm seeing an atrocity in front of me right now, what is the action that I should seek within me to recognize, why am I seeing this right now? Why am I getting triggered by this right now? Why is this in front of me? What truth within me brought this to be in front of me? And that's it. That is a really difficult thing to do. I will admit to that.
But is there room for action in there? If it's of the highest good, I don't know.
I mean, the number one thing we need to do is to evaluate what points of self below our heart chakra that is causing this to be our truth, or that we believe to be our truth right now. And only after you identify all of that bullshit, and you're able to rise above the maze or whatever you want to call it, then the action should follow out of that. Because your prime directive will have the action that will justify the means. And truthfully, if I had to generalize, the action would be no action. For the most part. Right? Most of the things that we engage in and lose ourselves in, actually, in truth is, in recognition of what they actually are, call for no action at all.
I think that's probably true.
I'm not saying oh, look, we see a cat that is getting ready to die on the side of the road. You do nothing about it. That is a different circumstances. Or you see a homeless person being beat up by a gang, right? Different. I'm talking about 99.9% of the things that we actually dive into and make it our life's mission to change, to argue for, to judge, to affect, have nothing to do with us whatsoever. The only action there is
any of the drama that you hear from people that you see on the news, that whatever, any of that nonsense
has nothing to do with us. The only action that it actually has, the only purpose of it being there is actually for you to stand back, go inside of yourself, and judge what reaction you're having towards that thing that is triggering you in your pain and in your trauma.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
That is the only action. Now, if you want to get into some sort of contemplative circle and discuss hey, I'm being triggered and here's what the thing is and I don't know where to go.
Right.
I'm hoping people out there have someone
And
who can ground them in and go, well, what is it triggering within
and this
you?
is very different from a philosophical discussion about whether the Democrats are right or the Republicans are right. This is not that.
This is not going to an echo chamber.
This is you right.
This is not you going into an echo chamber,
or even go into the opposing team to understand.
Any
it is not
arguing,
that. It is
you're in the wrong place.
What is it doing to me?
Yes. If there's any arguing, if there's any justification, if there's any logical or moral evaluation how this is the right thing or the wrong thing, you're in the wrong place.
Right. It is not about whether this is right or wrong. It is about what is my reaction to this and why. Yeah.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah.
That is what we've been failing at. If I had to say binarily, what is it we're failing at is recognition that we are our own sovereign being and we're responsible for self. And then thus the propagation of our world, what we see in the world is a complete reflection of what we're trying not to address right here. And as long as we spend time not to address everything is right here, we will see the reflection of that in our world because the world is giving us an opportunity to release that, to step back, not dive into arguing, not diving into judgment, but to start seeing ourselves through the lens of this mirage.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. It is difficult to take yourself and make yourself responsible for something that you're saying.
It's even difficult. I mean, especially in the midst of it, because you're all riled up about it.
Because your pain body is overreacting.
And it feels like it's the most important thing in the world. And unless you step back, it doesn't occur. Historically, it did not occur to me to step back. I'm better at it now, but you get riled up and you almost want to be riled up.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I'm diving in and I'm going to commit 100% to this.
But that's beautiful. You want to be riled up because you want to see an opportunity how you can release trapped energy within you.
Right, but it doesn't always, it historically didn't go there.
Yeah, but
it went into riled up, turning into more riling
yes, but
up.
if somebody's listening to this right now, I don't know, one person, that's it. The riled up is your body going, hey, there's this trapped energy that this thing is hitting, and here's your opportunity to uncover it and release it. Right. In order for you to de-densify the slower center so then you can connect to your prime directive of self.
I try, I know that feeling of riled up.
Yeah, I do too.
And to me, the trick is almost associating that feeling with, hey, with some sort of cognitive process of, wait, what's going on here?
Well, yeah, not cognitive process, trying to logic something out.
Not logic something, but like
see what is it that is hitting within you.
Yeah, introspective thing. Instead of, riled up. Riled up just triggers more riled up, left to its own accord. But having it just sort of trigger a different response.
This is going to be hard to accept for most people, because it is hard to accept with me. But if we deem ourselves to be responsible for everything that we see and everything that comes into our life or everything that even passes by us, then through that responsibility, then we can go, wait, what's within me that is causing this truth in the front of me to perceive to be my truth? Even if it has nothing to do with you, even if you cannot deem yourself to be responsible for this, right? Even if it's just like, oh, look, I'm afraid of Nazis from World War II back when they invaded my grandmother's house and raped the family. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if it's just that, what is it within me that causes the propagation of that energy to still be alive today? Do the Nazi concept of Nazi still exist in this world because of me today? That's my responsibility. Am I propagating the existence of Nazi and evil and rape because I'm afraid of what it means for somebody to invade my home and then rape my relatives? How am I responsible for that today? Am I instilling judgment from 2024 to 1943 of the badness to those human beings who propagated that action? Like, is there energy still trapped in there for me to witness that? Do you know what I mean? And then I have to hold myself responsible, right? So when you talk about ancestral sin or ancestral, wrongdoing or whatever it is, that is what that is. It is not sin, and therefore you have to spend lifetimes making up for it. It is through this pain, through this body of knowledge that is flowing through you, through your ancestral, you have every moment to basically look at it from the standpoint of prime directive and go, what am I propagating in that thought? What am
It's
I propagating in that ancestral belief? What am I propagating in the concept of Catholicism? What am I
right.
propagating when I am, penancing for the sins of me, my fathers, and whatever the terms
Right.
are?
I mean, it's both. There's obviously a biological component to it. In Bruce Lipton talked about that. The trauma from the mother, especially if she is currently with child, can literally be passed on in the epigenetic sense. But beyond that, the learned, taught behavior of you know Nazis are bad. Nazis did all these terrible things. From generation to generation to generation, uh, is kind of how it spreads. And
It spreads to the idea. It actually spread. That's just the nuance, but it actually spreads an idea that we live in the binary world where there's good and bad, and then
and
thus
everybody and
there's
everybody think
safety and
and
unsafety.
everybody thinks that they're good.
Everybody doesn't think they're good. In fact, we think that we're bad. You thought that you were bad.
That's the wrong word for me.
How about this? You were, as a child, by default, regardless of your religious belief, you were taught by your parents right from the beginning, oh, you shouldn't do that. But the
True.
second you say you shouldn't do that, that places a binary frequency on because that's bad and that's good. Because that's safe and that's unsafe. Because you should be afraid of that and you shouldn't be afraid of that. It splits your mind into this binary thought process that is qualified density. That
Right.
generates qualified density.
Okay. Like playing in the street. Shouldn't play in the
Yeah,
street.
right. Because by default, what? That's unsafe.
Right.
Because by default, if that's unsafe, then there's something that is safer. Then the binary split happens. And the second the binary split happens, that's it.
Is there a way to live and raise children without that?
Today, yes, I think so.
Without saying don't play in the streets?
No, teaching them to connect to their prime directive and then see the outflow of our dimensionality be presented itself in the binary sequencing. Right. So, right, our dimensionality is so dense that there's these visceral definitions that we're very easily attached to of good and bad.
Right. I mean,
Of
it's
like,
don't stay away from white vans and people with puppy dogs and candy.
right?
Don't play in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. And inherent in that is this, fear of something terrible happening to our children
No, I
because they're getting hit by a car or
because
abducted
of
by
that
someone.
binary density.
Right.
Yes. Right. But and this is a brushstroke. What humanity is going through right now is recognition of what the binary density creates for us as our truth and how to ascend, let's say, from that. I mean, the term is ascend, but I know that's a religious term, but it's not meant to be used religiously. To ascend from that frequency and being able to see it for what it is, and then thus, I will use manipulated, but not in the wrong way, but kind of to actualize it as this is our truth. This is what density is. This is what binary functionality is. But I can see through this gameplay and I can see through the propagation of energy while I'm still at the core center attached to my prime directive.
Let me ask this, and maybe this is a step in the right direction, but maybe this isn't the whole way. Like when I think of like don't play in the streets or don't get in white vans with pedophiles, um, it's not you don't have to be scared about this, but it's something to be careful about. It's not. This isn't a fear thing. But that moves it over to a safety thing instead of a fear thing, which
Yeah,
maybe a step in the right direction.
but in that case, safety is there's such thing as unsafety. Like safe and
Right.
unsafe.
But in
You
what
know what I mean?
I mean, in 2024, would you not give advice to children? Don't get in white vans. Don't play in the street.
Right. But when we're raising our children now, it is different than when we raised our children in 2007 and
Sure.
2014. I mean, think about what kind of fear and density we propagated onto them, still living in the fear and density of ourselves. Like it was
Right.
literally like complete projection of
Sure.
everything that we were not processing
Right.
onto them. Right. But if we were to have a child right now, would we condemn them to density? Or would we start right from the beginning as there's this line of flow that is your energetic being, right? And then everything in the three-dimensional interpretation of our reality, for the most part, functions in the binary split.
No, I get that.
And
but
then thus they can perceive the density, but not be one of it. They can be safe, but not be in fear of what it means to be safe or unsafe. They can choose to flow within themselves and recognize the world that I'm functioning has these splits. But you're not densifying into the fear of the density that it would pull itself through.
yes. And this is me bouncing back and forth between that. Right? Because I'm like, okay, but we have this child, and the child is sitting in the middle of the road playing. What do you do?
You teach him laws of physics. Like cars move forward. You're a human being that has a body and has an impact. And if the car were to impact you, you would get injured.
Right, but
Right,
then but
but
then,
you
but inherent is injured versus not injured in that.
Yes, but how
Safe.
much?
That's safe.
Yes,
That's safe versus not safe.
yes, but the truth is, whenever you respond the way you're feeling right now, how much fear would you instill into all of those statements?
Right.
Whenever you yell at Annabelle or Aiden, or especially back in the olden days, remember how you used to have your flip out sessions? Do you remember where it came from? How much charge you carried with that?
Yeah.
And we would point out to you like, dude, this is not this moment. The teaching of safety of you sitting in the middle of the road is not this moment. What you're teaching is your own personal pain body and propagation of everything that you fear from this lifetime and on forth, and you're propagating into the fear of the teaching forward.
So on the surface, there still is some sort of lesson that probably shouldn't play in roads, probably should stay away from white vans. But the energy that you're bringing to it is completely different.
You're teaching them the propagation of reality that you're experiencing in 2024, but not as a stated fact. Not as a stated fact from your pain, right? There you go. If you were sitting there and you have a child and you're teaching them concept of A, B, and C, how much charged energy of pain and suffering? Okay, there are potentiality of pain and suffering there, but if you were just teaching them and you did not have potentiality of being poor, and then therefore they need to learn this in order to overcome the poorness.
Sure.
And you do not have a pain body of being stupid,
this is
and
just,
you need to teach them because you don't want them to be stupid
this is
like
just
you.
a fact. Oh, here, this is the name of this flower.
Right.
Here you go. Yeah.
And they go, when a teacher at school teaches your child A, B, and C, they don't give a fucking damn about whether or not your child knows A, B, and C, because they're not projecting their pain body of being stupid or being poor and knowing ABCs is the most important thing for them to climb out of poverty. They're just teaching them, as a matter of fact. This is just what their job is. And they project their, for the most part, putting that knowledge on forward. Here's A, and here's B, and here's C, and here's how you write, and here's how you pronounce it. There's no pain body there.
So it is not the content of the lesson or what is being taught or what is the knowledge. It is the energy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But that lesson, for the most part, would come from what part? If the teacher is in the right
It
space,
should come from the heart.
it could be from the heart. I'm like, oh my
Right.
gosh, these are beautiful children. And here's the essence of how this dimensionality works.
Right.
And here's how beautiful A looks like. And here's how beautiful B looks like. Here's how beautiful C looks like. And cat has this, starts with a C for some reason in the United States. I don't know why. But, all of that. Right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
You are teaching that from the standpoint of beauty and not the pain body trauma of, holy fucking shit, if they do not know their ABCs, they're going to be poor on the streets, starving, freezing to death. Because that is where I was teaching the ABCs from.
It's like, if you don't have a pencil, then you're going to not be able to take notes. And if you can't take notes, then you're going to fail your tests. If you fail, you die alone.
Yes, that is how pain body propagation looks like because you don't have a pencil.
Right.
I mean, that is exaggerated level of humanity. Right? But how easy it is for us, that we make fun of that and we kind of satirically state that as a funny thing. But that is the epitome of what it means like for you not to have a pencil. Or they're just like, oh, I don't have a pencil. And the chances are in the United States, if you're just walking down the street, you will find a pencil somewhere.
I've seen a lot of pencils.
Right? Do you see what I mean? Like the idea that you can just be walking down the street and there will be a pencil,
right.
You'll be like, oh, here's a pencil. But in that space, you're not in the pain body of not having the pencil.
Right.
The pencil will never actually come to you because you're actively programming yourself into the pain body where you don't have a pencil. And everything that will bring within itself.
Right.
Like how many things right now are manifesting themselves with a thought process idea of like, let's go, hi. This is the thing that is in our life. I wonder how we're going to solve that.
There were 2 yesterday. There were 2.
Yeah.
Which was?
We just ran over there very curiously. I hope it's not. I hope it's not.
Oh, situation?
Yeah. No, but do you, right?
There's something that needs to be manifested up.
This is how the world functions. Is we had a thought process and we offered a question within our conversations to self or even in our mind self to the idea of like, hey, this is a thing. Now, I'm not trying to brush away and tell you that this is how magically the world gets solved, but you can see that is how it works.
A lot of it's
you present.
The more open you are to it, the more things what seems like magically gets solved in a way that is just inexplicable and beautiful.
But when you bring up a subject and it is not a problem and it is not an issue and you're not addressing it from the pain body, you're addressing it as a thought.
Right.
Come out of the space, out of what you were at that time. You weren't even thinking out of a space, but you didn't see it as a problem.
I didn't have a charge about it. It was just like, well, here's a thing, which, we could this way or that way, whatever.
What does it mean, the charge? You were not addressing that thought out of density.
Right.
You did not take that thought and you brought it into density of binary sequencing. The second you have a thought and it's not densified into binary sequencing, that issue gets resolved. That is how manifestation works. That issue gets resolved because you're not taking this thought and you're dragging it down to binary sequencing. Because the second you densify that thought, it becomes a problem. It becomes a thing because you're dragging into a place where it is stuck in that position.
Right.
Like it's quantum positioning. It is stuck in a position of, here's the truth. You're manifesting it as a truth in this position. And then thus, action has to follow in order to
undensify it.
In order to resolve it within the density that you brought it down. But if you have a thought and you have not densified it, then it's just literally on the open plane of interpretation.
Is that densification basically the same thing as judgment?
Judgment or perception into it being a problem that needs to be solved.
This is good or bad.
It is a thing. You make it a thing. You made it a thing. Not a thing in the center, which is density. Binary sequencing is density. So the second you densify a thing, the only way to solve that thing would be to then solve it within density. You have to have to address it with density.
Here, you've made it a 3D thing, and now you have to solve it in this 3D world, 3D stuff.
Time
and effort and money and whatever.
Yes, whatever you believe that density has to be answered with. But if you, but how manifestation works, if you have a thought and you don't bring it down into density, then you're like, very quickly, it just becomes resolved. This is not escapism. Like, I don't want people to think this, but I just wanted to tell you how it works. It literally takes care of itself because you have not brought a definition of how it needs to be solved. You opened it to the universe without densifying the thought.
Yeah.
And then, boom, zarame. 3 wishes a day.
I was going to say
it. That is a reference to our child's cartoon that we were raised with. It was not great.
It was not great. And those 3 wishes were squandered every time.
Yeah, but think about how many pain bodies that brought up within you.
Well,
That's why that cartoon did not work out so well.
Because they brought that up with everybody?
Yeah, because everybody was fucking pissed off at those genies fucking it up.
It wasn't
through their pain body.
It wasn't the genies. It was the girl who made the poor wishes, right?
No. It was there were 2 genies, 2 girl genies, and then they would like.
What's the name of it?
I don't know. It was the reason why it wasn't so good is because the cartoon has to cater to the parents in order for the children to continue to watch that, right? And so within parents, it would bring up a lot of pain bodies they did not want to address. And then enough of that frustration, the parents are like, okay, yeah, this is not going to work for my child to watch this because I'm getting triggered. The truth is they were getting triggered and they were not addressing why they were getting triggered. And so the cartoon just kind of, lost its way.
I think that's why Sesame Street has been so successful, is because it works at multiple levels. The parents enjoy it, and it's, entertaining, and it's also educational to the children.
I don't know. I don't never watch Sesame Street.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but I think it's still on. It's, like 40 plus years or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I know there's Elmo. And he has a annoying laugh. But that's me being annoying through my pain body because I don't like stupid laughs. And I judge people for being stupid by having a stupid laugh. So that's my pain body.
Maybe Sesame Street's not for you.
Well, no, but like if Sesame Street is not for me, then I should then recognize why Sesame Street is not for me. Why am I being triggered by Elmo's annoying laugh? And what is it that I project onto it? And then is that still the case with me today? And do I project that judgment onto somebody else who's Elmo-like-ish?
But you watch anything and you're like, oh, I like this character. Oh, I don't like that character.
Yeah.
And
the world is literally,
right. You can just walk down the street and you're like, I don't like this person because of what they just did, what they just said, how I see them, what they're wearing, how their face looks, and you just instantly have form these opinions, densify about, this building, or this sidewalk's cracked, or all this stuff. All this stuff
you take this
is not the way you want it to be.
You take this and then it hits the densified portion of yourself that are still not being released.
Yeah, it's all these things that you are judging as good or bad, right or wrong.
Yes. Whenever we made statements that just automatically got resolved yesterday, we were not judging it as good or bad. We were just judging it. Oh, look, here's the is.
Yeah.
This thing, and I need to address it somehow. I wonder how we'll address it. But you did not assign it's a bad thing and I need to address it.
Right.
You did not say it's a good thing and I need to address it. In fact, you just said it's a thing.
Yeah.
You did not binary split that thing into judgment and density.
Years ago, I wanted a server rack for the house to put equipment in.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked and I'm like, oh, they're kind of expensive, new. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to subscribe to a Craigslist or maybe it was Facebook Marketplace thing. And I'll just get a notification and maybe one will show up that is close and cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Close and cheap was what I was, I guess, hoping for. But I wanted it, but I wasn't obsessed with it. I didn't have a lot of charge over this thing.
You didn't care.
I didn't care because I don't need it. I'm not going to go,
You had a desire.
I had a desire.
But you did not have density assigned to it of good or bad.
And
you were not dying to have it, or you were not in stress that you didn't.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to, even $100 would have been a good deal. I don't want to spend $100 on this. It's a thing that would be nice to have, but if it comes, it comes. We are on a vacation and I get a notice that there's a dude 2 minutes from our house who has a really nice one for free.
Yep.
So come pick it up. And I'm like, I'm out of town, but I'll be there in a week. Like, okay. And he has a battery backup that Dad, I don't want this. You want this thing too? It was insane. It was absolutely insane.
But it would have been hundreds of dollars.
That one would have been hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, because it's really nice.
It's really nice.
Like this is crazy.
With a glass door. And
it's like professional shit.
It's a half rack. It is really nice.
Yeah. But think about that. There was no density.
I would have never bought something that nice.
Yeah.
I was like, oh well, this is metal thing that you bolt to the wall. That's where I was. If I had to be forced to buy something, it would have been something like that. It would have cost over $100. It's nuts. I love it. It's nuts.
But think about the thought. You had a thought. It was hard thought of like, oh my gosh, it would be amazing. Or like, oh, in our case, yesterday, we were like, oh, this is the thing that we need to address because it would be amazing if this was solved. Like we need to solve this somehow, right? But we did not went, oh fuck,
how are we going to solve it? This. Oh, it's going to cost us time. It's going to cost us money, and I'm going to have to do this.
Yes, but even though I thought, okay, it might cost us $50 a week. I thought about that. But I did not actually feel bad about it. I'm like, yeah, worst case, it costs us $50 a week, but that's not a big deal because it will make this thing look beautiful. That's just something that needs to be done. And there was zero weight. The only thing I felt about it was love because I wanted something to look nice, right? And I wanted to be resolved. And I was okay paying $50. I was okay us driving there and taking care of it.
I didn't even mind doing it. Doing it was not the problem. It was the drive that if there was anything, it was like, I don't want to do the drive, but I don't mind doing it.
I didn't even assign the density to the drive as being a bad thing. The second you assign badness versus goodness to it, anytime that a signature happens and you enter into binary sequencing, it densifies it to where then another density needs to come in to solve it. But if you don't binary it.
At first, I didn't even consider the drive. I was like, oh, I don't mind doing that. That's not a big deal.
Even if things entered into my mind as like potential solutions for it, I did not weigh them down with judgment. And because the judgment did not get weighed down, it did not enter into a dimensional densification. And then thus, the problem resolves itself like that because all problems resolve whenever you function in the space of an undensified being.
Yeah.
Like it is, again, not rocket science. And it is amazing how it happens. And it is super easy to understand how it happens. But because we densify everything through judgment and through fear and pain and scarcity, we face the reality that is our responsibility. The kaleidoscope that we look at the world through is our responsibility. We just don't want to admit to it. We don't want to take responsibility.
It's hard.
Well, because the second we admit to it, then we have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to take responsibility.
No.
And so that's somebody
else's fault.
Yes.
Somebody else's problem.
Yes. So I again, we're like ending it on like take responsibility. But not because that's density. Because there's a space in which you have to recognize what is it that you're doing to create density in your own world. Right. It is actually extremely simple. Like I know people hate when I said this. You know, in my book, I it's not but they say simple, 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 simple.
Right.
And I mentioned this before, but people got really angry about the simple part.
Simple and easy are two different words. Simple does not necessarily mean easy. But I also agree that it is.
It's simple and it is easy. And the only thing that it calls for is commitment into recognition.
It's straightforward. It's not that it doesn't require focus or maybe effort to some degree to remind yourself to do that. If anything, that's what I have trouble with, is that I will get so riled up or so lost in something that I will forget.
Well, because density is really dense.
Right. It sucks you in.
Well, it's literally density. What does it do? It literally pulls you down. Right. And then you're stuck.
Yeah.
The only solution out of that is to, if you want to say raise above the maze, or to go into the space where you're able to see into the density. It's almost like a looking glass to where you can tune in the kaleidoscope and go, hey, looks like there's a lot of dark colors there in the center. Like there's just a lot of colors down here that are really dark. Right? You can see that as a color or hue. And then if you see the darkness in the center, but not in the bad way, I'm not saying darkness, just like densified color would be dark, right? And you go, okay, how do I lighten myself up? How do I make the center of my kaleidoscope be lighter in color? How do I put more white and yellow and gold around the center and then allow that to emanate out and have the kaleidoscope be a reflection of that? And you can have the dark blues and the dark greens and the dark reds all around it, but emanating from the heart center where it comes out of the white, and then the expression of density is actually emanating from the prime directive of the light. And then you then see the reflective of darker hues through the lens of the light center. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think that is a very good way to look at the densification.
Yeah.
Because the density in the center of the kaleidoscope will actually take all the light and it will actually pull it in, right? Like if you look at the kaleidoscope and there's a lot of dark blues and dark greens in the, let's say, purples right there in the middle, your eye automatically goes into the center, right? You almost don't see the gold and the white around it because the eye is drawn to the center that is the density. But you have to almost like flip that image and go, wait, what if I split the atom and I take the blues and the greens and I put them around and I have the center actually be the white and see everything through that lens? Is that?
Yeah. Because everybody has that.
Yeah.
That's not
your density is that core.
And it isn't that there's anything necessarily wrong with it.
That is human experience.
Right. It's not, the goal is not to suppress that or repress that.
No.
It's to be able to recognize that that's there and that maybe isn't where you should be all the time.
No, that
you should rise above it.
You can have that experience. You can have the same experience, but without the density that you're assigning to it. Every experience can be had through a lens of the prime directive ray. That is iridescent golden light. And then through that, you can have the experience of blue, and you can have the experience of green, and you can have experience of dark purple, right? And then visually, you and I keep on saying this, it is the same experience, but it's a vastly different experience. You're having a different experience on the surface that looks like the same experience.
That's the thing, is that it looks like the same thing.
Yeah.
From a bystander, it would be no different. But
yeah.
But the individualized experience of it is wildly different.
Yeah. 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 So not hard, very simple. Only through denial of self will you want to see it for something other than what it is.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, it is hard for us to commit to be vigilant with ourselves. Because, in my case, I've spent 40 years making sure I don't do that.
Yeah, me too.
It is easier to live in denial, that to face the pain that we think we're going to face.
That's the thing.
When we get there,
there's this idea that if that it will be hard or bad or painful or something to go through this.
Well, we started the pain, and then we're like, fuck, there's so much pain. Shut it off. And then that's it. And so then there's this stuckness that got formed, right? And at the time, we did not have the capacity to actually see through it. And so now you don't want to go back into it because you're too afraid where you left it off.
Mm.
But it is just, elementary.
Right. I mean, I think of it as almost like a Band-Aid. It's like, yeah, it's going to hurt a little bit, but
it's not even going to hurt. It's going to be
beautiful. Once it's off, it's done.
It is going to be beautiful. That's the thing, is we're afraid because we think it's going to hurt.
Maybe it's more like
it will be
maybe
pure
it's more like
beauty.
There's a thorn in you that is.
No,
it's so much better when it comes out.
It's not even that. What we think is a thorn, what we think is pain, what we think is suffering, is actually beauty of our expression of self that we're afraid of. We're afraid to face what we have determined to perceive as bad. But there is no badness. There is no sin. There's no penance to be paid. It's just beauty to be uncovered. And because we perceive everything through the lens of the binary good versus bad, we don't actually see it for what it is, which is just love. That's a whole other subject. But, again, we're 2 hours in. I'm still going. Oh, we'll continue to keep going, but maybe we'll obviously resume this topic on the next episode.
That's a wrap.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.